किया कि आप रहने वाले हैं तो ये अच्छी बात है।
सर
सुरेश प्रभु जी।
सर,
रामगोपाल जी,
first of all, I think we are discussing something today which is going to affect not just humanity in totality. All the 6 billion people living on the planet are under serious threat of survival. But more than that, probably the entire biological life that exists on this planet is also under severe threat. So this is a very serious matter that we are discussing today, and that's why I am very glad that across the parties, across the house, both the sides, and that's why we are requesting Mr. Kapil Sibal, who is one of our enlightened members, to also share his ideas with us a little later, because we are all really concerned about it. Sir, we have faced changes in climate all throughout the existence of this planet itself. It is not that the climate doesn't change at all. There was an ice age which just disappeared. There were dinosaurs who no longer exist on the planet. So it is not that the climate doesn't change. So why are we so concerned if this changes all the time and it is now changing? So what is the cause of concern? It's not a change of climate itself, but change of climate caused by human action. We always thought that this change is not natural one, but a crisis is human made. And that's what we are really concerned. We, the world community, signed the UNFCCC, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. But the convention was not enough. So little later, we signed the Kyoto Protocol. The protocol which can actually implement the ideals, the principles of the convention. So today we have a protocol, we have a convention, and we have a problem. Because we realized that just by signing convention and protocol it will not help, because we signed the protocol and then we thought that emissions will start falling. In fact, since 1990, we have seen that we wanted to bring down the emissions in the developed countries over the 1990 level by 2012, but in 2007 we can say that emissions have gone up from the level that they were in 1990 and they are not even fallen. So that's a real reason of crisis. So therefore, when we signed a protocol, we are not aware about the scientific evidence conclusively. But over a period of time, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which was set up by UNEP and the World Meteorological Organization, have now conclusively proved that climate change is human-induced. But something very interesting that is coming out of this report is this climate change is not only human-made, but it's caused by actions from 1750. What is the significance of 1750? So that's a year when we have an industrial revolution which actually started the world. So it is something which is caused by the actions of those who started industrial revolution in the world. So we in India, we are the victims of climate change. We are sufferers of climate change, but we are not the cause of climate change. And that's the difference between the whole world suffering, but we are suffering not because of us, but because it is by somebody else's actions that we are suffering today. And so therefore, what is going to happen as a result of climate change? Many of my very distinguished colleagues have already put it across. I don't want to repeat, but sir, there are going to be fewer cold days, there are going to be higher temperatures, there are going to be more heat, more hurricanes, more droughts, and as a result of which we are going to have more sufferers in poorer countries and poor in rich countries. Sir, this is a travesty of justice in which the rich countries cause pollution and the sufferers are the poor countries. This is something which I don't know how it has happened, but this is the reality which is proved that poorer are going to be the more sufferer of climate change, and this is something which is going to happen. So the whole world, including India, we are right now preoccupied with one singular object of increasing our GDP. Whatever we do, we want to find out whether GDP will increase or decrease. If it is going to increase, we work on it. So therefore, when we think about GDP, the world community, the World Bank, the IMF, everybody talks about increasing GDP growth of the world. Climate change is going to decrease the GDP from 2 percentage points probably to 4 percentage points. It is anybody's guess. Anybody can make any estimate because this has really no basis. But it is for sure that a GDP loss is a certainty. So we should be concerned that when we are talking about economic activity which is causing climate change, the same economic activity is actually going to decrease our GDP gains, and in fact they are going to decrease it. So poverty in poor countries is going to increase. The poorer in the rich countries are going to suffer more, and this is something which is really of a matter of great concern to us. Sir, we had made very interesting agreement in Kyoto Protocol. We divided the countries into Annex 1 countries, the countries who are industrialized countries who are supposed to reduce emissions. Kyoto Protocol talked about non-Annex 1 countries, the countries who are not required to reduce emissions. Now we are seeing that the whole world is saying that all world should take responsibility. Yes, it is a fact, everybody has to take responsibility, because even in Kyoto Protocol, there is a clause which is the foundation of the Kyoto Protocol, is common but differentiated responsibilities. So we agreed that whole world has to take responsibilities, but differentiated one, because the world is different. There is already a gap between the world that exists today, between the poor countries and the rich countries, so it should not be perpetuated further. There should be an agreement to do that. Sir Stern, Nicholas Stern, Sir Nicholas Stern, very eminent economist, advisor to the Prime Minister to be of UK, Mr. Gordon Brown, and he commissioned a study, because everybody wants to look green now. If you want to be the Prime Minister, you should look green, so that we will get a better acceptance to people. So he commissioned a study, and the study revealed very interesting thing. Sir, if you take action today, the cost of taking that action will be much lower than if you don't take any action, and the cost of inaction will be much higher. So therefore, the action is called for now, and that's why we are debating at a time, and I'm very happy that we are going to work on it. Sir, I was talking about how we are going to be affected by this. Sir, our entire activities, commercial activity, economic activity, agriculture activity will be affected. Sir, 2/3 of the world population largely depend on agriculture in the developing countries. So developing countries' mainstay of economy is agriculture, though in India, for example, agriculture accounts for less than 20% of the GDP. But still more than 60% in India depend on agriculture. So agriculture is going to be very badly affected. The wheat crop, the rice crop cannot withstand the heat. In fact, there is a very interesting study made by Lester Brown, who was advisor to Secretary Freeman, who actually brought the Green Revolution to India. He has made a very interesting telling story that if the temperature rises, the wheat crop will take a beating. And therefore wheat and rice, all of them will have a serious problem. And more than that, the water availability is going to be under severe strain. As it is, we are facing water shortage, and climate change is a misnomer. In case of India, it is going to be climate variability. It is not just change which is going to affect, the variability is going to be a serious problem, because variability would mean that there will be too much rain for some time and probably no rain for a long time. So variability is going to cause a serious problem for water availability. So agriculture, water, and in addition to that, our public health. Sir, it is definitely estimated that water scarcity will lead to also salinity in water, resulting in many diseases, including dengue, cholera, malaria. The mortality rate will rise because of this reason, as well as because of the heat that is increasing, and as a result of which we will see a less caloric intake for the poor people, because of the food production will have fallen, and which will also aggravate the poverty that we have today. So therefore it's a very serious problem, which also, as everybody has said, the glaciers will melt, and in fact glacial melting is result of climate, the temperature rising, as a result of which the sea level will rise, and this is all related to one another. So what should be our response of India? Sir, I am thinking that the response of India should be looked at it from two angles. One, how should we respond to it, because it's a global issue. How should we respond to this in global context? What should be the international response India should have? And two, what should be the India's response in terms of changing domestic policy? Sir, first, I talk about international because it's a global problem. It's like a human body. Sir, I cannot say my hand is not working well, but my body is fine. So the entire ecosystem of the whole world is interrelated, interconnected. So if US is affected, India is affected, Africa is affected, everybody is affected, because it's one ecosystem. So India's response has to be international also. One, for a long time, we accepted a principle and we are talking about it. India has been saying that our per capita emissions are one of the lowest in the world. So we have got the largest number of poor in the world living in India. So we cannot say that we can take cap on emission, which will be really dangerous for India. We understand that we have to change our policy. But we must say that those who are emitting more should try to reduce their per capita emission. We in India will also try to increase more. Wherever it contracts, we can accept that as a point on which there should be capping. So capping has to take place in a manner which will be very fair, equitable and just for developing countries like India. And if the world is talking about poverty reduction at international level, sir, all the states, heads of state of the world met about 7 years ago and signed a document called Millennium Development Goals. So while the UNFCCC is in place, which is signed by all the countries of the world, the same way the Millennium Development Goals are also signed by all the countries of the world. So we must marry the environmental concerns with our social concerns and try to make sure that poverty reduction is not affected because of our concerns for environment. Sir, we accepted a principle internationally that polluter to pay. Sir, if polluter to pay is a principle accepted, and if the last report of IPCC, fourth assessment report of IPCC conclusively proves that it is the industrial evolution which caused it, then who started industrial evolution must pay for it. So therefore, polluter to pay principle has to be accepted, and the industrialized nations who cause the pollution and damage the ecosystem must pay for it. And sir, to do that, we must also take an initiative. I will talk about the international one. Mr. Kapil Sibal will be aware. Sir, World Bank was mandated by the G8 countries to come out with an investment framework for energy sector. This is a very important document which is going to come. Sir, energy sector is going to receive more than $3 trillion of investment in decade and a half. So how that investment is made is important. India must play a very proactive role in shaping the policies of this investment framework which the World Bank is preparing, because this will be like a regime in which the investment framework in energy will take place. So we must really work. And sir, most important point on this that we must fight for is adaptation. So climate change has two components. We must mitigate the emissions. That's what we all talked about. But most importantly is adapting to climate change, because the report, the IPCC report talks about that even if we stop emission today, for next 100 years, the atmosphere is going to remain the same as it is affected today. So therefore, if it is going to remain the reality, then we must adapt to it. And adaptation measures are most important part of India's priority, and therefore I request the Minister to pursue this path of adaptation fund. If polluters have to pay, they must fund the adaptation fund. And India must benefit from adaptation fund, and adaptation has to be one of the important priorities, the cornerstone of this. For that, sir, technologies, we have talked about, and sir, I will also talk about it a little more, but sir, technologies should not be just confined to energy and other sectors. Technologies must also be devised and designed for dealing with adaptation measures that are required. Adaptation is required in agriculture, adaptation is required in habitation, adaptation is required in water resource related issues. So adaptation technologies need to be developed, and that is what should be done. So sir, as in addition to this, when I talked about what we really need to do domestically, internationally, domestically, I think our energy policies must undergo sea change. Sir, coal is going to remain the mainstay, and even the integrated energy policy chaired by a group of experts, by Kirit Parikh was chairing it. He has said that coal will remain the mainstay of India's energy sector till 2050. If coal is going to be there and energy security is important, then we must develop technologies like coal, carbon storage and capture. Can we capture it and store it below the surface so that there is no emission? Something like this needs to be developed. But in any case, our energy policies, our transport policies and our industrial policies must undergo sea change. Sir, I would like to offer some suggestions. So firstly, if we need new technologies, and we need the technology which are going to save not just India, but the whole world. So suppose, sir, the developed countries give us technologies, it's not a favor they are doing to us, because they are doing it in their self-interest. Because if we keep emitting greenhouse gases, they are also sufferers like we are. But we don't want to rock the boat on our own, but we want the technologies. For that, we must develop technologies through a joint project whereby we have Mr. Kapil Sibal was part of that project of developing a vaccine for HIV/AIDS. Can we not develop a model like this, wherein new technology developed will not be covered by intellectual property rights, so that these technologies can be used and disseminated across the world, so that poor can use it, rich can use it, and they will benefit, we can also benefit, so that free of intellectual property right regime, we must have a new technology development initiatives. Third, so we must not treat the adaptation as a stepchild. In fact, Mr. Raja must work on it and not treat adaptation as stepchild, not you are treating it, the world is treating it. Mitigation is important, adaptation is more important. And therefore, we should try to work on it. Sir, there is a very interesting model available in the world. So, Montreal Protocol was signed to reduce the ozone depleting substances. So, ODS, ozone depleting substances, were actually causing a hole in the ozone system. We worked on it as a world community, and now we are seeing that ODS is declining. So, we have a very good protocol there. So, same model should be developed like Montreal Protocol for reducing greenhouse gases. This will really help us. And sir, to do this, we must have a country-specific study. I was requesting Mr. Kapil Sibal the other day that if we can have only India-specific study of impact of climate change on all its aspects, that will really result into assessing the damage that is required. Because if you are going to talk about damage and we are going to recover the cost, we should know what the damage is. You can get an insurance cover, an insurance claim satisfied only when we can actually lodge the claim. So we must have this study made in a very integrated manner, and we must fight for creating an international body of all environmental concerns, because there are too many bodies in UN system which is dealing with environmental issues. In fact, proliferation, if that is an issue, it's not nuclear proliferation, but proliferation of United Nations bodies. We must bring them under common umbrella, and they can then fight the climate change in a very integrated manner. Sir, bipartisan attitude is required. Sir, I am very happy, sir, that you decided to initiate this discussion, you allowed the discussion. And sir, I would request you that we must have a bipartisan group with which we all can work together for this climate change issue, because, sir, this is not an issue which can be decided on partisan line, because we are all going to be affected, we are all going to suffer, and we are suffering already. Therefore, this should be done in that particular manner. And most importantly, Kyoto Protocol will come to an end in 2012. What do we do after 2012 is a very important issue. For that, we really need to have a broader discussion within the country, as well as with some of our very important allies, like in the G5 countries, G20 countries, and we must work with them. Sir, be a market-based flexible mechanism. So there are one is the clean development mechanism, another is joint implementation. So India is one of the large beneficiaries of CDM projects, but CDM is not functioning as it should be. This is a very good umbrella.
What is CDM?
So clean development mechanism. Sir, there are three flexible mechanisms under Kyoto Protocol. One is emission trading, which is between only the developed countries. Other is joint implementation, and clean development mechanism, which developed countries and developing countries. We can receive FDI, we can receive technologies, we can upgrade our infrastructure in terms of making it more climate change proof. But for that clean development mechanism, we need a different type of an approach, and I think that also needs to be done in a big way. So my last point, and thank you for allowing me so much of time, sir, is that population of India is also to be considered as a part of a problem than as a part of an asset. So we are all thinking that we are going to get demographic dividend. If you have more people, it is better it is. So I think population increase means we have a decrease in per capita availability of natural capital, particularly land and water, and also as a result of which the footprint of people on the planet increases. So we must control population, we must work on this in a holistic way, and if we can all agree as a house, I am sure we can deal with this problem in a genuine manner. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I wish